Now, I don't know if you know who this is, if you can't see, but her name is Leana Wen. Now, she used to be the head of Planned Parenthood, eh? And then she went on to be a really pro-COVID maniac, right? She was one of the hardest ones. She was on CNN and all the time, and she would tweet out, just super, you got to be super afraid of COVID. But now she's turned around ever since I'm going to tell you what she's turned around, and the shit liberals hate her now.
Really?
They hate her.
Wow, you don't get any
They hate her because she's starting to speak truth or sense about COVID.
Even after the invasion of Ukraine cured COVID, they're still mad?
Even after the Ukraine. So she's in the Washington Post. She says, I'm a doctor. Here's why my kids won't wear masks this school year. Now, spoiler alert, she doesn't tell you the real reason until all the way at the end of this.
And they still hate her?
And they still hate her. I'm gonna jump to the real reason. Okay? I'll jump to the real reason. And masking has harmed our son's language development. That's why all of a sudden she went from crazy COVID lockdown maniac to a sensible a medical person who weighs the risks and benefits of things and has a conversation. And as soon as she did that, the lockdown COVIDian left. They turned on her. She was their favorite person, and then as soon as she started speaking sense, they hate her. In fact, they tried to get her. I'll show you. So here's what she said. So she was a maniac for COVID. She goes, for the first year of the coronavirus pandemic, my family and I were extremely cautious. I gave birth on April 2020, shortly after COVID-19 hit. To protect the baby, my husband and I pulled out our 2-year-old son out of preschool. We socialized outdoors only. At a safe distance from others, I limited indoor activities to work and grocery shopping, and I was never without my N95. So when she had a kid and her 2-year-old kid, they never saw her without her mask. After coronavirus vaccines became available to adults, I wrote that vaccinated people could relax their precautions based on their level of risk tolerance. My tolerance remained low because of my unvaccinated kids. I still avoided indoor restaurants and masked at indoor gatherings unless they required both proof of vaccination and a recent negative test. Our son restarted preschool, but we made sure that he was always masked. Playdates were strictly outdoors only. Given how careful we'd been, it was so then all of a sudden Omicron. She goes on to tell the story about how Omicron happened, and it's a much less virulent strain, and how it doesn't affect kids like everybody was worried, and the risks of things are way lower. And she says, given how careful we'd been, it wasn't easy to change my mindset to accept COVID-19 as a recurring risk. But the high transmissibility of new variants meant that we would have to pay an increasingly high price if our goal was to keep avoiding the virus. I began trying to think of the coronavirus as I do of everyday risks, other everyday risks, such as falls or car accidents or drowning. Of course, I want to shield my children from injuries, and I take precautions such as using car seats and teaching them how to swim. By the same logic, I vaccinated them against the coronavirus. Wow. Based on what data? Based on what data did you do that? I would like to see the data because it doesn't.
I know 8 mice who feel
differently. 8 mice who feel differently. So by the same logic, I vaccinated them against the coronavirus, but I won't put their childhood on hold in an effort to eliminate all risk. I accept the risk that my kids will probably contract COVID-19 this school year, just as they could contract the flu, respiratory syncytial virus, and other contagious diseases. As for most Americans, COVID in our family will almost certainly be mild. And like most Americans, we've made the decision that following precautions strict enough to prevent the highly contagious BA.5 will be very challenging, meaning we're not going to do it. Masking has harmed our son's language development. When she figured that out is when everything changed for her. And limiting both kids' extracurriculars and social interactions would negatively affect their childhood and hinder my and my husband's ability to work. To be clear, my family's decision not to mask our kids should not be mislabeled as being anti-mask. We would never stigmatize other parents and caregivers for the difficult choices they must make.
You just said your kid had their language development damaged. Everyone, don't do that. Shouldn't you be saying that as a doctor?
Right. Shouldn't you be Kurt, I agree.
It's your own choice.
This is how bad it is that she's afraid to give people a warning.
Was that the hill she wants to die on?
Right. Haha. We are also far from COVID minimizers. I've written extensively about the dangers of the coronavirus to children, and I'm clear she certainly has.
To the point of absurdity.
And clear-eyed about the unknowns of long COVID. Rather, my approach to this school year reflects the evolution of the pandemic and the acknowledgement that avoiding COVID-19 cannot be the singular metric of people's overall health and well-being. You are going to be infected with COVID-19 most likely. If you haven't been already, you're going to be. Everyone is most likely, according to Fauci, going to get the COVID-19 virus. So everyone going around playing this game, hey, if you have comorbidities, if you have some kind of crazy asthma, or if you're 90 years old, and I get why you would wear an N95 mask, and you might be afraid of catching COVID-19, just like you would be afraid of catching anything that could hurt your respiratory system. So go ahead, Kurt. You want to say something?
So what's the evolution? Like, she evolved to acknowledging that avoiding COVID-19 is not the singular metric of all.
Yes, that's what she did. That's exactly right. That's exactly right. That's what she did.
Well, I hope she's paying hard for it.
So now she is being they're trying to get her. She was supposed to give us. Former head of Planned Parenthood, doctor, CNN commentator. This is her opinion, and they've been trying to get. So she went against the mandates too at some point.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah. So they hate her now, and they're trying to get her. I just saw an article in Reason magazine about how they're trying to get her kicked off a speaking panel about healthcare.
Wow, they're the only ones that'll come out to bat for you if you're getting your speaking tour taken down. Is Reason. That's the last. That's the last of them. Come see us do stand-up comedy in Spokane, Tacoma, Virginia Beach, Richmond, Arlington, San Jose, Miami, West Palm Beach. Go to jimmydorecomedy.com for a link for all tickets and become a premium member while you're there.